One of the most important things in the filmmaking sphere, in everything that you do, one of the most important things, I guess, is the final look and the final sort of vision that you've got for your project, for your film, for whatever, for your clip, for your YouTube video, for whatever that may be. In your head, you've always got this like look of how it's going to look, and that I think is probably the most time-consuming bit. What's happening, guys? Dan Debenham here. Today we're looking at a way of speeding up the process of getting that final look that you're looking for your video. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to use a plugin called Dehancer. And I want to just preface this straight away by saying thanks to the team at Dehancer for sending me this plugin and allowing me to do this video without watermark on and all that kind of stuff. And they do have a free trial of it, and that's basically what we're using today. So how does it actually work, and what actually is it? Well, it's often overlooked that we actually want to use a film stock in order to be able to create a particular look or a specific look for our films or our videos, and that involves essentially filming on film stock, which is incredibly expensive and time consuming, and you've sort of like, you know, once you've shot it, there's no deleting it and going back and reshooting it. You've shot it, you're moving on to another roll of film, as it were. But with Dehancer, what that does is it emulates that film look. So what I wanted to do today is just show you a couple of things that Dehancer does. I'm not going to go into massive detail on Dehancer. It's a huge program, a huge plugin for Premiere Pro and for DaVinci. And it also, you can use it in After Effects, and you can use it on Lightroom and Photoshop and that kind of stuff. And it's just a huge program. It does so many things, but I've picked out 2 or 3 things that I really liked about it and thought, do you know what? I think this would be really interesting and a really useful sort of plugin to have in your arsenal, as it were. And it allows me to do things like this, for instance. Now that was a fake intro to a TV show, drama, whatever you want to call it, that I created just to sort of play around with Dehancer and see exactly what it is I could do with it and what sort of effects I could get from it. And it really seemed to work. It works really, really, really well. So let's dive into Premiere Pro and let's just have a look and see exactly how we go about actually using Dehancer. Okay, so we're into Premiere Pro and we've got couple of clips on the timeline, and we've also got one adjustment layer as well, and we're wanting to make this footage look a little bit more like it was filmed on celluloid, and the way we can do that is by using the plugin called Dehancer. So how do we actually use Dehancer? How easy is it to use? Well, once we've installed it, which is just a simple double click install exe on a PC, and I'm assuming just a drag and drop into the file on a Mac, basically we just click on our clip, go up to our effects tab, and we just type Dehancer or however you want to do it, and it appears in our effects tab, just like any other effect in Premiere Pro. So that's a really cool feature, that you're doing this within Premiere Pro rather than exporting it out to another program. So we're going to drag and drop Dehancer up into our effects control tab, just like we would normally do anything else, and then boom, it appears. And you can see straight away from there that this has made some changes. And if I just click it off, you can see there's definitely some changes happened there immediately from the original footage to when I activate Dehancer. So first things first, what we can go to is input. Now input is essentially like that input LUT that you get in Lumetri. So when you want to put a Rec 709 LUT on something, or you want to put an input LUT on something, that's where you would go. That is essentially the same thing. And in this case, it stuck us a Rec 709 LUT on there. It's got Rec 2020 and so on and so forth. But one of the interesting things it's also got is choose camera. And we can click on that, and then it's got a list of cameras, and Dehancer are adding cameras in all the time. But in this case, you know, it's got all the ones that you would, the usual suspects, A7S3, R5, R6, C70, C200, etc, 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 and all those things like log and S-log, C-log, etc. It's got all those things there. What we're going to do is we're just going to stick with Rec 709, and we're just going to stay as we are. Now from there we can change the temperature, tint, defringe, all that kind of good stuff that you would expect to do within a colour correction area. And this is sort of similar to what you would do within Lumetri, but specifically for celluloid rather than for like the whole colour gamut for the whole clip. So one of the things that it's really useful for, so if you just sort of shut down input, is going into the film section. And the film section has a drop down box, and that allows you to select from a number of different celluloid outputs. So it has everything from Agfa, Fujifilm, Kodak, Polaroid, all that kind of stuff. And you can go from that and you can basically choose a film stock and then drop it onto your clip. Now it is worth noting that all the things that I talk about today, you don't have to actually do anything. You can just use it as drag and drop. You can just go, do you know what? I want this film stock. Boom. Thank you very much. So say for argument's sake, we'll just go hover over that. Fujicolor 100. I click Fujicolor 100. I'm done. I like that look. Thank you very much. Done. Done and dusted. Don't have to actually go through the process of tweaking and fiddling and all that kind of good stuff. I can just leave it as it is, because that's just standard Fujicolor 100. Now, once we've selected that and we've got it, and we can enable and disable it so we can see what the differences are, and we can sort of like see what we're actually dealing with, what we can then do is we can go to one of the first of three things that we're going to talk about today. And the first thing we're going to talk about is film grain. So film grain is a really interesting thing in Dehancer. It's not a blanket sheet over the top of your footage. So it's not like a layer pushed over the top of your footage that is just film grain across the whole lot. It's actually algorithmic. And so what it does is it kind of like decides, it looks at your image and then goes, actually there'd be more grain there than there would be there because of the highlights and lowlights and all that kind of good stuff. And so it sort of adds a very natural looking film grain to your footage. And I guess that's the reason why you have the ability to change the size of the film grain itself. So for instance, we can go to say 6, which is sort of like going to give us more film grain. It's going to be slightly larger. There's going to be a bit more in there. It's going to feel a bit more grainy. But you can also change the amount of film grain, the resolution of the film grain, and then you can change how much of that is in the shadows, highlights, midtones, and how much of it is affected by the chroma, and so on and so forth. And because of that, that means that you can say, do you know what? I don't want any film grain in the shadows, so I'm going to take that down. And you can see immediately, if I put 50 back in there, which is what it was at, and hit enter, you can see the image has popped a little bit. And it's popped a little bit because it's added that film grain back in to those shadows. So I'm just going to drag that out and say I don't want the film grain in those shadows. And essentially, from there, we can start tweaking and fiddling. And we can say, well, we want a little bit more in the highlights, actually. And you can see it changes it slightly. And it's sort of like, it adjusts accordingly to what you're trying to set. And I guess that is one of the amazing things about Dehancer, is that it's really sort of intricate how you can fiddle and you can adjust with your footage to get exactly the look that you're looking for, rather than just a straight flat layer over the top as you would do with Photoshop. Incidentally, with Dehancer, as we just come to that, you can actually use Dehancer. They do actually do a plugin for Photoshop and Lightroom, and in Photoshop and Lightroom, the Dehancer plugin does take you to a sort of extra editor, and that extra editor allows you to then add all these sort of film grains to it and all that kind of stuff. So it sort of copies the image, does the editing, and then puts it back into Lightroom, so you've got a copy of it in Lightroom. And that, so you are popping out of Lightroom slightly into a pop-out box and then popping back in, but it's all done within Lightroom. You're not actually you're not leaving Lightroom, so to speak, shutting it down and opening up another program altogether. It's all done from within that. So that's another great feature of Dehancer, is that it not only can it be used for film, it can also be used for photographs as well. So it covers that. I want to shoot on film, but I don't have a film camera, or I want to make it look like I want to shoot on film, but I don't have a film camera, but I can do that through Dehancer, because this, again, it's all algorithmic, and it makes sure it makes your photo look like it was shot on whichever of those stocks that you picked. So back to the footage at hand. So we've got that footage there, and we've done it, and we're good, and we're just happy with how that looks. That's all really, really nice, and it's got some great sort of film grain in there. We're going to take this down to maybe 2, because I think it's a little bit too grainy, and we're going to take the amount down to maybe 10, because we want it slightly less grainy than it is there. And obviously we're going to leave it as it was before, but obviously you can see it's changed everything there, and you can see there is some nice grain up here in the highlights. So what are the other 2 features that we can talk about today? So what we're going to do now is we're going to move across onto this footage here, another sunset, but this time it's got a road in there, and we're going to use an adjustment layer for this one instead of using the clip itself, because it can just be dragged as you would do with anything in Premiere Pro. It can be used on adjustment layers or directly on the clip. So let's select the adjustment layer. Let's go to the effect and drop it into the effects control panel. And again, we've got ourselves a clip here. So what we're going to do is quickly go to film. We're going to select the same one we had before, which is Fuji Color 100. So we've got that nice little bit of darkness there. In fact, tell you what, let's go with this guy. Let's go with one that Kodak Gold 200. Kodak Gold 200, that's quite a popular film. So let's go with that, and let's see what we can do. So the first thing we're going to talk about is bloom. And bloom is a really sort of subtle way of expanding the lighting in your footage. And it's really subtle, but adds just that extra glow to stuff, and allows you to just let things pop a little bit. But again, it analyzes the footage that you're using and says, actually, there's going to be a bit of glow over there as well. And there's going to be a bit of glow on, say, for instance, the side of this mountain, because it's coming from this sunset, and we basically need to make sure that it looks as real as possible. So what we can do is we can just come down here and we can just hit enable, and once it's enabled, it's enabled. Basically, you can either do it as it is, or you can start adjusting stuff. So with us, what we can do is we can say, do you know what, we want to amplify that to say 70, and if I just unenable it now, so I disable it, you can see across the top of here and across the top of this road here and sort of round the edges here, you'll see that it just adds that little bit of a pop to things, and it's just adding a little bit of glow in there. Nothing too major. And that's the idea behind this plugin, is it's not making wholesale changes to your footage. What it's doing is it's adding into that footage, it's adding in an effect that you would get if you shot on film and you'd done all the things you needed to do to adjust it in camera to be able to get that effect. And again, you can get the highlights, you can go up the details if you want, you can make the diffusion bigger or smaller, you can do all sorts of amazing things with it basically, and you can sort of move it back and forth, you can mask it out if you want to. There's a lot of things that you can do in terms of like making your footage look like it should look in a really, really, really professional way. This is, like I said, I keep saying it, it is not just a blanket changes everything in on your footage, and then you've got to sort of like trade-offs to try and get it to look right. This will look at where it needs to be and then put the effect where it should be in terms of where the footage has been shot. So oftentimes if you've got a blanket effect across the top, you're like, right, well, I want it to be this strong, but it's too strong over this part and not strong enough over this part. So I've got a trade-off to make here, and it's never quite right and never quite what you want it to be. Whereas with this, it's exactly what you want it to be and exactly how you need it to be, because it's doing it in a really, really intricate way. So the next effect that we can look at is halation. Now halation, so if I take the bloom off, halation is basically just that little glow around the edges of things. So if I enable that now and I come in, you can see that there's a little bit of a pop, and I'll just show you where that pop is because it's very subtle. And I like the fact that it's really subtle. I don't want it to be like over in your face. I want it to look like it was intentional, like it was an effect that was intentionally done by a cinematographer. I don't want it to just be blown out, and that's the key to this. It's not sort of like just all or nothing. So if we enable it again, so we enable halation again, and we're looking around here, you can see that it's just popping that red look. Can you see that red around the edges there? And that's just adding that halation in. And if we add the bloom in as well, you can see you've got a little bit of blowout, tiny little bit of blowout. And you know, you can reduce that, so we can say let's make that 40, and you see how it's popped it back again now. So it's not quite, it's just there. It's there enough for you to know it's there, for the viewer to know it's there, but it doesn't overtake the image, and it doesn't overtake the whole scene. And so people aren't focusing on it. It's just there, which is great cinematography. Great cinematography is something happens and you don't notice it's happened because it should have been there and your brain says it should be there. And that's what this is trying to achieve. It's trying to achieve that real original film celluloid stock look. And yeah, it's just an amazing piece of kit. So obviously they've got a trial, and I wanted to say thanks to them again for providing me this trial to use for doing this sort of review of Dehancer. And if you visit their website, obviously you'll see that they've got several different variations of this plugin for different applications like DaVinci Resolve, After Effects, Premiere Pro, so on and so forth, Photoshop, Lightroom, etc., etc. And they've been gracious enough to provide us with a code, which I'll put here, and I'll also stick it below the like button as well, so that when you go to checkout, you stick the code in, you'll get some money off there, and you can enjoy the plugin from that point forward. And as I say, they're adding new cameras in all the time, and adding new versions all the time. So this plugin is just going to get better and better and better. But it does allow you to get that really specific arty film celluloid look without having to spend thousands on celluloid and go out and then worry about whether you've actually captured what you needed to capture, along with buying a celluloid cinema camera as well, a Panavision camera or something like that. You can do that all in post using Dehancer. So with that, hope you did find this quick look at Dehancer, the plugin Dehancer for Premiere Pro and Lightroom. I hope you did find it useful, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace!